Hello, and welcome to the second episode in the first season of the Cyclical Wisdom for the Modern Woman podcast. And I am delighted and honored today to have a dear friend and colleague with me, Debbie Brenner. And she is currently residing in Arizona, and her practice is called Quantum Health Coaching. Now, before I let her tell you a little bit about her story, I'm just going to share briefly that Debbie and I met. Actually, I was trying to remember when it was. It was quite a while ago. I
want
can't
to
remember the year.
2013, I believe. And yeah, I don't know why that sticks in my head, but it does.
Yeah, I was thinking 2012, 13, somewhere in and around there. I had asked a mutual friend of ours about getting a roommate for a conference, and she matched me up with Debbie, and it's just been a match made in heaven since then. And
Absolutely.
I am super grateful to call her now a dear friend, as well as an incredible consultant who can really make a difference in people's lives, which is why I have her here on the podcast today. Our theme is talking about what role that detox plays in our hormone balance. And Debbie does something very unique and different. And that's why I wanted to bring her on today, is to share about that. And she does something that's called IQS. And what I'd like for her to do now is just give us a brief little background story of how she ended up doing this. And then she can explain to us what IQS is. So Debbie, the platform is all yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Gosh, it's been a journey. But how I started was my son had fluoride poisoning in utero when I was carrying him, and he was born with no enamel on his baby teeth. And it took me about 9 or so months before his pediatrician diagnosed him with dental fluorosis. Of course, I didn't know anything about it. I was like, dental fluoro what? And the internet was just young, budding. There wasn't a whole lot of information on it, but I started digging around and found some pictures that looked exactly like my son's teeth, and started, to think, wow, what the heck is going on here? Took him to a couple of dentists. One was a pediatric dentist in Bakersfield, California. We lived in California at the time. And of course, they totally poo-pooed, the diagnosis. Fluoride's a wonderful thing. You must be putting your baby to bed with a bottle. I'm like, no, not even. But anyway, started, moving along. It was about 9 months that he was about 9 months. And we moved to Arizona when he was just shy of 2. And by that time, his teeth literally were disintegrating. His baby teeth were disintegrating in his mouth. And, through circumstances, we found an amazing pediatric dentist here when we moved to Arizona, and he was able to cap the teeth. And that began my journey, in what the heck happened, and what are they putting in our water, and why are they hiding it? And, and then that led me to, to go to school at Arizona State, got my degree in cellular biology and pre-med, basically. I didn't know what I was going to do with it exactly at the time. I knew I didn't want to work in alternate in allopathic medicine, because, that was big pharma and everything. And I understood that, but I didn't quite know where my path was going to lie. Anyway, I graduated and ended up working for a chiropractor. And that's where I learned about the IQS. And he bought a system for his office. And I was trained as his practitioner because of my degree and everything. And it was amazing. I had no knowledge at all that these systems even existed. IQS stands for Interactive Query System. It's actually a type of a electrodermal screening, or another word for it is EAV, electroacupuncture, according to Voll. Dr. Reinhard Voll was a German biochemist and doctor, and he actually was kind of the grandfather of the technology. It's basically using energy, kind of like when you get acupuncture, you understand that, needles go in the body along the meridian lines, and they open those channels to allow the energy to flow or to be blocked, depending on, what the practitioner feels you need to have done. And this EAV system basically taps into the same, using energy, taps into those same meridians and can read the energy that's flowing in the body. Different things can stop that energy flow. I like to say, like, it's kind of like, you plug in a wire, you plug in something into your wall and your outlet, in your home. So maybe you might kink that wire. Somehow it might get kinked, and then that energy will stop flowing. It's kind of like that in the body, things can stop that energy flow. Things such as heavy metals, petrochemicals, parasites. I see a huge amount of parasites that go undiagnosed. I would have to say, as far as pathogens go, parasites are probably one of the number one things. Lyme is huge as well. There's a lot of co-infections with Lyme. A lot to be said. Those things generally live symbiotically. They live together because the pathogens feed off of the heavy metals and the petrochemicals. They use them as a food source. I know that was hard for me to understand too when I first worked for my chiropractor, and he told me that. I was like, how, what? These parasites eat these things? And he's like, yeah, heavy metals are minerals. Hello, they're minerals. And petrochemicals are they're organic carbon-based molecules. So they're food for these guys. Not only are they food for these pathogens, but they can use them as a shield to kind of hide from the immune system. So I kind of picture, I love pictures. So I picture like these bugs in your body, holding up the shield, like, yeah, you can't catch me, you can't catch me now, kind of thing, hide from the immune system.
Yep.
So, really, if you're trying to fight something or get something out of your body, like such as a parasite or say a fungus or something like that, you're never going to be able to fully, deal with that unless you deal with the what they're eating, what they're feeding on,
Right.
which is the pet, and they always come together.
Yeah.
This machine is able to locate everything, gives off an energy pattern and a vibration and a frequency. And so this machine can pick that up by tapping into the meridians of the body and picking up those energy, feels in the different things that are going on. It can also read energy in the organs, like the liver and the kidneys and the thyroid and, whatever. It can even read emotions. So, yeah. It never ceases to amaze me. Every time I do a scan, I'm just like blown away because I'm like, how does it know?
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. So, this is just another super valuable tool to be able to get a deeper look into what is happening on the inside of our bodies,
Right.
And often, when we are working, I focus mostly on women. I work with men as well too. And so this is this applies to any gender really, is the fact that anytime we have this toxic load in our body from these pathogens particularly, and their food sources, then, our vitality begins to be suppressed. And then so our lives start to go down and down and down and down, and our light bulb gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And then theirs starts to get brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. And then they're the ones that are shining. And then we just end up being, kind of these hosts that are in a really debilitated state, struggling to live our daily lives. And it really wreaks havoc, especially on women's hormones.
Right.
This is one of the biggest areas that I have found, if you're experiencing PMS, or having any other issues, really. We need to look at what is happening, not just outside of the liver, but what is going on in the pathogen base. And that's where I love what you do. In your experience in working with women in particular, what are some of the examples that you have seen come up of toxic load and how that's affecting their hormones and their health in particular? Could you maybe give us a couple of examples of what you've seen in your practice?
Sure. One that comes up almost all the time is the thyroid, and the low energy, the low metabolism, the hair falling out.
Yeah.
All, and and they'll go to the doctor. The women will go to the doctors and be within normal ranges after they
Yep.
do their all that, and yet they come here and I go, well, I'm seeing a hypo status on the thyroid function energy wise, and they're like, well, I was, I just was in my doctor and I'm within normal ranges. I'm like, well, what I'm picking up is an energy or an energetic pattern that drives the biochemistry. The biochemistry is what they're looking at. So I'm looking at the exchange of the energy that moves those electrons way before it ever can show up. And so I really like it when people come and they say, I'm within normal ranges per the CBC test, because I think, oh, well, that's great. That means it hasn't tripped the biochemical tripwire yet. You have that. Right. We've got time, and we always have time. I mean, even if you trip that wire, it's still fixable. But it just is a little bit more work,
And it
takes longer. And the age, how old you are, that takes longer. I know Dr. Jack Tips has always said, for every year that you've been so compromised, and when you're dealing with thyroid issues, a lot of times people are compromised 20 years before they even really have a symptom, or even if before it's picks up on the blood work, on their blood. So 20 years, a long time, so Dr. Tips has always said, 2 to 3 months for every year, just think about that, and, people calculate that and like, that's a long time. Well, yeah, but healing is, if to do it right, it does take time. And everybody's so used to a quick fix. Give me a pill, feel better tomorrow. And that's the hardest struggle, is to change that paradigm of thinking with people. But I would say, with the thyroid, just, because, you've got that issue, huge issue. A lot of medication is given, for those conditions. And really, I look, when I see people like that with thyroid issues, I look for heavy metals, specifically mercury. Mercury can kick out, remember, heavy metals are minerals, only they're heavy, they get stuck in there, they get stuck in the cell, stuck inside the cell, fouling up the mitochondria, and they will kick out the good minerals that are needed for thyroid function, like the iodine. And mercury has an affinity also to dock on the selenium receptor site, and keep selenium from being able to dock in its port or its garage.
Right. I remember that. Yeah, I remember learning that. Yeah, no, that plays a huge role. So, so thyroid, issues and thyroid imbalances are showing up here a lot. Do you have women who just potentially come to you and say, oh, I'm experiencing endometriosis, or PCOS, or crazy menopause symptoms, and I'm struggling with that? What are some of the things that you see when you run the IQS with women who come to you for these things? Could you maybe share some of the things that you see in those results?
Right. Well, when I think about hormones, and everything, I always think about them as kind of collateral damage. They're never like the original cause. They're always like the collateral damage from something else going on. So hormones have, every hormone has a unique docking port on the cell membrane. And that's a big thing to, you have to fix that cell membrane. That cell membrane gets damaged because of toxins. I tell people, it's like, I live in Arizona, so it's really hot. So when you buy a water hose, at the garden center, for at the beginning of the summer, and it sits out in the sun all summer long in the 120-degree heat here, it becomes brittle and cracked. It gets, the rubber on it gets degraded. It's not flexible anymore. And so that's kind of like with our cell membrane. It's called a mosaic bilayer. It needs to be flexible. It's got protein channels embedded in it. It's got receptor sites hanging off of it, and those receptor sites and everything, they are there to, as I call them, garages or docking ports, garages to have those hormones come in and dock or seat themselves. Well, if that membrane gets damaged, those hormones can't dock. They can't. Or if, say, mercury is hanging out in one of those docking ports, what's supposed to dock there can't dock there. It's got something else in there,
Right.
So it's really, when you're dealing with hormones, I mean, what I do anyway is I know people get miserable and they feel bad when their hormones are out of balance, but you can't ever really balance them unless you detox, unless you find the cause of what's causing it,
Right.
and fix that cell membrane, which is a lot of really good fats in the right ratio, restoring that flexibility and cleaning off those receptor sites so that those hormones can find their docking port so they can pull into their garage. Another interesting thing too about these receptor sites and hormones is that each hormone has its own docking port. Estrogen has a different docking port than testosterone, than any other hormone. I mean, they each have their own conformation. So that, and those docking ports can get malformed as well, or misshapen, or,
Right.
so really, fixing hormones, you can support, like if I know somebody has a thyroid, situation going on, I'll give them, some, something to help, kind of bring that or help that thyroid function. But you have to remove the mercury. You have to clean off those receptor sites, restore the functionality of that cell membrane, in order to have the functionality, of the hormones being able to dock again.
Right. So
So
that's a process, definitely a process. And just, for clarification here too, when we are talking about toxins, we're talking about a lot of different things. I mean, as we've mentioned, this can be chemicals, it can be heavy metals, it can be emotions, traumas, mold, parasites, bacteria, viral, it can even be undigested food.
mhm.
That is floating around in our systems and causing issues, and incomplete elimination as well too. A lot of people have digestive and elimination issues, and if that goes on, it may not be a major deal and you may not feel a lot from it, but like you said, when that low occurrence is happening on a daily basis over a long period of time, then there's this gradual and slow breakdown,
Mhm.
of the systems. So like a lot of what you're talking about here, even like none of that happens overnight. This is a
Yeah.
process that happens over a period of time. And by the time we start to feel symptoms, a lot has already been going on usually,
Mhm.
at that point. And as you said, with the traditional allopathic standard of testing, a lot of things really don't show up on their radar until it is a pretty big deal.
Mhm.
And it's something that's really affecting the individual's quality of life at that point.
Mhm.
And so that's why I love so much what you were saying, like with the IQS and with the machine, because, you know, even though people are coming in with normal ranges per se, a lot of individuals know in their gut, you know, in their inside of themselves that something is not right, that something is just not functioning right. It's like, it shouldn't be this way. Something is off. And so having the ability to be able to do something like the IQS test, I think is an incredible gift.
You know, honestly, it bypasses so much of the money spent, you know, with all, I mean, so many different places people go, you know, and
trying to find answers and testing and trying new things and going from one doctor to another to another to another to another. You know, that's so draining, not only financially but energetically as well too. So wow.
I feel very blessed to be able to even know about this technology. I didn't even know about it until I worked for that chiropractor, and you know, I didn't even question it. I was just drawn to it, and I was tested originally, and I knew all my symptoms. I knew what I had going on, and the person who tested me, he was originally the person who trained me on how to do it, and but he tested me originally. Didn't ask me anything but my name and my birthday. Nothing about anything else. And he starts testing me, and it's all coming up on there. And I'm just like, how does it know? Thinking, how does it know?
I know, because I remember having a scan done many years ago, and just being like in shock when I saw the results. Because again, like you, I knew what was going on with myself, and I was just like, wow, that is either really scary or really amazing. And I decided to go with the really amazing.
Me too. I was just crazy. And I know I've been using the machine since 2006, 7. And I can tell you it's picked up Lyme, it's picked up cellular parasites, it's picked up, you know, metals in the brain, you know, it's picked up so many things that modern medicine just, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with you, you know, take this, you know, antidepressant pill and go home, you know, or here's an oxygen tank, go home and make a will, you know, or whatever. I mean, it's just insane. But, yeah, I mean.
Do you have maybe, just out of your memory, do you have like maybe a case study that a story you could potentially share with us right now, of a woman that you worked with that, say, had parasite influence, and how that was affecting her health as well as her hormones, and kind of what the process was in working with her, and then what the end result was? Do you have anything like that, perhaps, a story you could share with us?
Oh gosh. Well, you know, I have a lot of heavy metal cases, which, you know, have the parasites as like a, you know, co-contributor. Oh, let me think here a second. Oh, I've got cases where parasites have paralyzed. I've cases where, well, I have a young woman who was 6. I do a lot of cases with methylation, MTHFR methylation mutations, which affect the liver and the body's ability to be able to clear toxins. But I had one case, a young woman who came into my life when she was about 16, 17. She's in her early 20s now, but sick since birth, had been, you know, her mom had documented doctors. I mean, she had a laundry list, you know, and she ended up at Barrows Neurological, being seen by the top ped doctor there when she was about 16. She was under 18. She was about 16, 17. And she had been diagnosed with migraine headaches that were just absolutely beyond the pale. I mean, she just had to just lay in a dark room. She had eye protection that had to be special made for her because she couldn't stand the light. She had special ear protection made for her because she couldn't even sit in a restaurant because the sound was just deafening. That's how I knew. I had one phone conversation with the mom, and I said, she's got heavy metals. I know. Light and sound sensitivity. I'm like, that is off the chart. I said, she's got metals. I said, you need to go. This is before I ever tested her on my machine. Just one conversation with the mom. And I said, you need to go test her for MTHFR. Bet your money she has it. Well, she did. And she went back to her doctor at Barrows, because she was under their care.
Right. When
I came into the picture. And of course, it's really kind of hard, because if they're under their care, I can only do so much, but I'm starting to educate, basically. And, I shared about methylation. The mom didn't know anything about it. She went off and had the genetic test done. She was compound heterozygous for a couple different mutations, which was a very serious case, causing problems since birth. I mean, she, like I said, I even went to Dr. Shane Morris, the biochemist there at the stomach, and I showed him the list of symptoms that this child had, and he was even amazed. He's like, this is crazy. And I go, I know. I go, she's pretty much just bedridden. This is a 16-year-old that just can't get out of bed. She's got, and two, she had contracted a mycoplasma lung infection, and because her immune system. Oh, and that's another thing. She had been diagnosed with Hashimoto's at age 5. Age 5. I mean, she had all of these diagnoses. It was just awful. And it was just basically, after I said to the mom, I said, go get her tested for MTHFR. She did. She had those 2 mutations. And she went to the doctor at the Barrows and said, well, what do you know about MTHFR? Well, I kind of know a little bit or whatever, but that's not Morgan's problem. That's what she said. That's not Morgan's problem. And it had everything to do with Morgan's problem. Her body could not eliminate these toxins. Her liver could not eliminate the toxins. And, anyway, it took us working with her it was probably close to a year. I want to say 8 or 9 months, just rebuilding her liver. We had to rebuild her liver enough to where her liver could even be detoxed. Every time we tried to give her a cleanser, she would crash. So we spent months just trying to rebuild her liver. She had, again, the migraine headaches. That's a hormone issue, the gut, it was just everything. Her gut was a train wreck, and I've seen these toxins under people who have been to microscopy.
Microscopy.
Yes.
Yeah, live blood cell analysis. I have as well too. It's amazing.
Fascinating. And these toxins, these metals and these petrochemicals and things, they literally look like shards of glass.
Yeah.
So if you can visualize shards of glass floating through your vascular system, doing all kinds of damage, causing all kinds of inflammation, and then we'll get into the cholesterol part, and how that affects, the hormone production. But anyway, back to little Morgan, and, she was my amazing case with methylation, and she's amazing now. She's totally well. She still has her mutations, and she still is going to have to, be mindful, of keeping her body clean, and all of those kinds of things. But she came into the world toxic. Her mom is a beautician. She did cosmetology. So her mom was toxic. So she got those toxins.
Yep.
Coming into the world, and having the mutations, she was not able to clear those toxins, so they just built up in her body. Yeah. And from the get-go, I mean, who gets diagnosed with Hashimoto's at age 5? Goodness. Where Dr. Shane was like, this is crazy, and I go, I know. Wow. This was my big learning curve here.
I bet, and that's something too that your mainstream doctors are not talking about. And I find when I start talking to women, about hormones, it's like, well, we need to look at the liver, we need to look at cholesterol, we need to look at the adrenals. And, even within the realm of hormones, there's this hierarchy. of, which ones need to be functioning in order
Yeah.
for all of them to be functioning. It's like this list. But the funny thing is all we ever hear about is estrogen and progesterone mostly.
Right.
And then maybe a little bit about testosterone and everything. But cortisol and oxytocin are like, or is that the right? Yeah, oxytocin. Is that the right? Yeah, that's right. I always get it mixed up with the drug.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's this hierarchy, and if the oxytocin isn't in place, and if the cortisol isn't there, then you can't really start working with the estrogen and the progesterone or the testosterone or any of these other ones. And all of these are all regulated by liver primarily. And then cholesterol comes into that and plays a huge role in that as well too. And yet, like you said, it's about educating people, because nobody else really, when you go to your doctor's office, they're not sitting there talking to you about any of these things. They're like, oh, let's just do another test. Oh, you're in the normal range. Go home. Yeah, like you said, take an antidepressant. It's all in your mind. That's what they love to say, is that it's all in your mind.
Well, and the liver, going back to the liver, right now in the way things are in our little world today, the liver is so compromised, and these methylation mutations are so prevalent. I want to say 60+% of this is what my learning has been. 60+% of the population has these mutations to some degree or another. They don't know. It's just, and there's varying degrees of, how serious or whatever, but, there are DNA tests that can be ran to.
Well, I was just going to say, that's actually my preference. Instead of running blood tests, I prefer to run the DNA test through Systemic Formulas. That we have this amazing, test now available. They're just bringing it all in-house and revamping it right now. So it'll be available again really soon. And I can't wait. I actually have a wait list of people waiting to do it right now, because, when we can see what is happening at that level, like you said, we can actually correct systems that are malfunctioning. And once we do that, then that enables everything else to bring itself back up online again, and to function properly. And like with the liver, for example, like you said, most people's livers are so compromised these days, and it's the era that we live in, and it's the world that we live in. Even if you live a healthy lifestyle, there's still so much that's coming at us environmentally and emotionally as well, because as I said, emotions and traumas all can fall into that toxic range as well too, and really supporting the liver to build. I just wanted to finish that, to build first, because so many people focus on detoxing and then they end up super sick because they don't do the repair and the building work to enable the liver to detox first.
Right. No, that's so true. And that goes back to, what ended up having to be with Morgan, because I tried to give her some cleansers and some different things, and she just was like, not ready. And we tried. I mean, it took eight or 9 months before we were able to even get into the detox, because her liver was such a mess,
I'm seeing that so often now, with the people that I work with. And most of the ones I work with are women, so I keep referring to women, but I've seen it in men as well that I work with in my practice. And it literally takes months and months of just very slow, what I call the prep phase, basically, where you're actually kind of just preparing the body to heal, because it's been so compromised and it's so overworked and it's just so imbalanced and is really struggling. And again, because of a lot of these environmental inputs that we are facing in this day and age, it forces us to go even slower in a lot of it, because if you start moving the body even in a healing direction too quickly, then it can have really serious ramifications and you can get really sick and be very dangerous. And I have I see a lot of people on the internet and social media just pushing the detox and the cleansing and the fasting and all of this. And, fasting can be amazing and plays a huge role in repair work, but it has to be done properly. And the body has to be in a place where when you fast, it's actually supporting you rather than causing more damage. And this is where, a lot of people run into, oh, I'm, we self-diagnose. It's like Google is my doctor, and we self-diagnose and we start doing all these different things. And it can just really lead to a lot of hardship and a lot of stress, physically in our bodies, which is why why you and I exist, because we are guides for people. We are here to support people and to guide people in a safe way to actually repair and heal their body so that they can function again at optimal level.
Absolutely. I mean, I never realized, until, I've started training, in all of this, how critical it is to be mindful, to go slow, and to be, because you want to have a life. You want to be able to get up out of bed and have your life, take care of your family and be there for, the things that you have to do. And that requires going slow. And that again is the paradigm that we have to switch. Everybody wants to get things done so fast. Yeah, it's, I would say that's my biggest struggle with people, with changing that. But I'm, as you are, a lifetime student, and everything that I learn, I love to share, or to, because this is a train wreck and we're all heading off of a cliff, and, we have got to, we've got to educate. And I'm so passionate about that. I feel like that we've been blessed to be in a group of doctors and not just doctors, but even PhDs, who I pinch myself, thinking, I land here,
I know we've been really blessed, you and I, to have met a lot of the doctors and practitioners out there that we have, and learn from them and their experience, and just really take that and use that in our practices to be able to support people at a much deeper level. A lot of, again, too, it's, you see a lot of people like, oh, eat this food, it's going to heal this, or, do this and it'll get rid of this problem for you, kind of thing. And there's truth and validity in all of that, but we need to look at the bigger picture, and each individual is so unique. We may all have the same diagnosis, for lack of a better term right now, but how that gets addressed and how our bodies are functioning within that is different for every person. And, that's why I feel like it's so important for people to be educated. Again, it just comes down to the education. Why is something important? Why should we be paying attention to this? Why do we want to look at potentially making this change? And, that's the, like you said, that's the biggest issue that, I run into with a lot of people, is not everybody is willing to put in the time and the effort to do what they need to do in order to heal their bodies.
Right.
It takes a commitment, and it takes a certain place to get to within our own journeys to be able to really make ourselves that priority in our lives, and it's that it always comes down to that. It's the same, when you're in an airplane and the oxygen mask drop, and they're like, put your own oxygen mask on first so that you can stay alive and, be able to help other people. And, it always applies. And it's even to us as practitioners, I'm always monitoring myself. Where am I at? What's going on? And I'm, it's not like I'm perfect or anything. I have all kinds of, health challenges and issues, because again, I was born into this world with challenges, and it's been a life process figuring out how to thrive within those challenges. Like you were saying with your example with Morgan, she experiences a vibrant life now, but there's certain things that she's had to incorporate into her life as her life path in order to be able to do that.
To stay healthy.
Exactly.
And women, we as women, we're nurturers and caregivers naturally we want to give to everybody else, and we put ourselves on the back burner. It's such a struggle for women.
No,
But
totally. It is. And like I said, it's something that, I have to constantly remind myself of too, as well. It's like, well, if I'm not thriving, I can't support anybody else to, to heal or to change their lives and get to that point of living vibrantly, which is why I named my business I Live Vibrantly, because it's a reminder. It's like a mantra and a statement that reminds me every minute of every day, am I making the best choice in this moment to support that statement?
right.
And so it's a mindset and it's a lifestyle. It's not just, and I tell people, when they come to me and we start talking, like in the discovery calls, it's like, I'm not going to say, eat this food, do this, do that. That's not how I work. I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to examine your entire life, every aspect of it. And we're going to look at how, as a whole, that whole piece can support you to thrive and how we can get you past that point of where you're at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, it takes being ready, for that. And
Mm-hmm.
we live in this world of mainstream media that is always like, quick this, quick that, overnight success, overnight instant results. And that's what we get bombarded by in the media as well too. It's like, oh, drink this drink and lose weight overnight,
I know.
kind of thing. And it's like, oh, if only it was that easy. But like, again, we didn't get to this point overnight. It's been a slow process. And I remember when I first started studying and learning, I love that example of like the dimmer light switch. You
Mm-hmm.
have it on max and it's full and it's bright and it's just like, oh my God, it's almost blinding. And then just micro increment by micro increment, as our health starts to decline, that brightness dims just ever so slightly. But
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes it's not to the point where it's all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, it's almost dark in here. What happened?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we have so many distractions in our lives today. And so being fully present with ourselves and really, really learning what self-love is, I feel, is connected to this healing process whereby we get to actually live a vibrant life for the rest of our lives, while we are present.
Yeah. It's when you get to be in an autoimmune state, which is really autoimmune today is the new common cold.
Yeah.
Everybody some autoimmune thing. But
And
it's
the
not
sad part is doctors will tell you, oh, that's it. Now you got to live with that. You got to manage it.
right. And it's just not true. I mean, you can, I know energetically I can pick it up like on my IQS, energy wise, if there's if there's an emotional block or a trauma block, I won't be able to read the energy of the physical until that is taken care of.
Oh,
I can,
interesting.
yeah, I can see it now, on my system. Now, I had to, learn, I mean, I've been doing this for many years now, but, I remember I've had some cases in the past where, no matter what I did, I just couldn't get I couldn't get a read on them. I couldn't, figure out, I couldn't get their body to energetically speak,
Yeah.
And, I didn't understand that was that trauma, emotional trauma layer that I just wasn't paying attention to, but it was showing up and telling me the body was, and what it does is like, I don't feel safe enough to tell you anything until you deal with this. You deal with the emotional and it's spiritual too.
Yep.
Spiritual, and then the emotional, and then the physical. And
Right.
that's where I'm a cellular, biologist. So, it's like all about the cell, but it's like, no, not really. It's all about the emotional and the spiritual. That
Yeah. Yep.
what's going on in the cell, and the body will not tell you uh, what's going on physically until you deal with those other layers that are above it.
Right.
I've seen and can pick up on the machine.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I'm so glad you bring that up too, because, again, that's a lot of what I see in my practice as well too. And so often when I'm working with women, it's not just dealing with the physical aspect of what's coming up. It's like we have to dig really deep into, okay, what are the mental and emotional and spiritual influences that are allowing this process to continue as well too, because that's all part of the healing. And a lot of times a lot of that is not within my area of expertise. And so, but I can help and try and define and decipher what areas need focus and need work, which it sounds like the IQS machine might be doing that as well too. And then we can refer and recommend what type of work would be appropriate to address those things. Is that what you?
Yeah, definitely can be picked up, and it can be dealt with as well. But I have someone that I refer out to for clearing all of those things, just because there's an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
And it can, and a cost efficient way to do it, and I'm always looking out for that for people. It's like, what is the best, easiest way to deal with this? And
so what is that you're referring to, if you don't mind sharing with us?
I really like Dr. Bradley Nelson's emotion code, body code work. Can be done to clear traumas, emotional traumas, and outright traumas. It's amazing. I've just seen it. I've seen it work on animals, and there's no placebo when it comes to
yes. Yeah, that's right. I remember the conversation with you now. We had a little while ago. That's right. So let me ask you this then. Something like that, would that be something that could tie in with, or potentially be almost the same as like limbic rewiring, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, really just removing. I think of it like like an energy vibration. I mean, if you've ever done any study like on cellular memory,
right?
That's fascinating.
Oh, I know.
Just
wish I had more time.
these things, that these patterns of behavior, like you see it, alcoholism, addiction, behavior, things like that, and they run in families.
Yeah.
And you're like, why do they run in families? Why is it that, my dad had it, my uncle had it, whatever, but yeah, it's really a generational kind of a energy vibration, energy pattern. And those things can be found, and they can be removed.
Yeah.
It's really, not hard to do. It's using energy, and so, and it can change behaviors. Like I say, I've seen it done with animals very often, and there's no placebo there. They don't know what you're doing.
Exactly, right?
But I saw it. I can do a little bit of the emotion code work, just because anybody can learn to do it. It's not something that you even really, you probably want to go to someone initially, to be able to have it done,
guide you and kind of show you how to do it.
But if you're drawn to it, you can totally get certified to do it. It's not something that anybody can learn it, but right. But I know I kind of had a horse. Well, it wasn't my horse. It was a horse that was in a pasture where my horse was at the time. And she had her foal taken away from her. And she was just very sad. But I did some emotion work on her, and that came up, that she was sad because, she had trauma because her offspring had been removed from her.
The way that it had all happened and everything.
It all happened, yeah. And stuff. Wow. There's just so much, that you can find out. But all of this, does affect disease, the cell, and disease states and how they manifest.
Absolutely. And that's when oftentimes these days, way back when, we used to think that if something was in the DNA, then it's in the DNA and that's it, you're done. But what we realize now is that we can change things, and this is why I like to talk about rewriting our epigenetics, in order to rewrite that computer code, so to speak, in a way that actually supports us to thrive in this day and age, and in spite of all the things that we have to deal with. And, you know, that's where we get to bring in like all the different pieces. And that's why I also, you know, love the IQS so much too, because it really helps to show, as you were saying, you know, where that work needs to be done. And it highlights kind of the hierarchy and the way that we would want to approach rewriting our stories, basically, and rewriting our potential for our future.
You can definitely do that, you know, if say, you know, I had never tested anyone, and just say they were having hormone problems or whatever, you know, imbalances or whatever, and we wanted to hone in on that hormone section and find out, well, what's the priority here? You know, do we need to support the pituitary first, or, you know, the thyroid or the adrenals? You know, what is it that, you know, is showing up as the primary concern? Because a lot of times when you fix the primary thing, it's like a domino effect.
Yes, exactly. And everything else just kind of falls into place. And the thymus is another big one that hardly anybody is ever talking about when it comes to hormone balance as well too.
Right.
You know, and it plays a huge role, and yet you rarely ever hear anybody talking about that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The thymus and the spleen.
Yeah.
You know, and
especially
they're all important. And so, you know, reading the energy, the IQS can do that. It can tell you, you know, on the spectrum, you know, whether that organ or system is balanced, or whether it's you know, hypersensitive or hyper, you know, or whether it's hypo, underperforming, or overperforming what is considered normal. Right. And then you just, you know, you know, can kind of do a better job of making a plan of action that is cost effective, you know, to the client, and you know, more directed, you know, in everything that you're doing. And you can track it too. That's another thing that I like. You can track the progress, you know. So it's
so, you know, like in my mind, you know, something like the IQS is going to be even has potential to be more informative and more educational, and support healing to be quicker, shall we say, and more efficient, and in the right, you know, order of things, even more so than, you know, like a blood test or anything else out there, really. And then also being able to track it. And so being able, I think, you know, being able to see inside of ourselves on such a deep level, and with such a broad spectrum of everything that's going on and how it's all connected, is just an incredible gift and opportunity, you know, that we have at this day and age. Technology has so many benefits, along with, you know, so many not so good things as well too. But again, it's all about how we use these tools to be able to support ourselves, you know, to be healthy.
There's a lot of tools out there that are just not known by people, like, you know, like these EAV machines. Unless you were introduced to one or know somebody that introduced you to them, they're just, you know, they're not something that you just know about, you know. Same with dark field microscopes and live blood analysis, you know. Same, there's lymph machines that move lymph tissue around in the body. There's all kinds of amazing healing tools that are out there. They're just not, you know, they're
more obscure these days. I know, like there was like a period of time, I would just say from like the 70s to the 80s, where, you know, there was a lot of research being done and a lot of work being done in these areas in particular. And I think, unfortunately, I mean, I don't know, this is just an hypothesis, but I don't see or hear so much of it anymore that like I used to. So it almost feels, and there was so much pressure against a lot of these, you know, holistic and natural
Mhm.
practitioners out there during that time period. And, even as we know, there was a lot of people whose lives were threatened
Mhm.
because they were showing alternative ways of healing that actually worked, and
Mhm.
that really supported people. And so I feel like a lot of these valuable tools and information um, that used to be a little bit more prevalent has just been kind of shoved under the carpet.
Yeah. Well, they're yeah still being used. It's just that they're just not advertised just because it's not you know
Well, it could be dangerous, is the bottom
yeah
line,
it's always
these days.
safe. It's not safe to talk.
We'll just leave
But
it at that, but we'll say that and we'll leave it at that. But what I want anybody who's listening to this to know is that there are a lot of different modalities out there that can really support us to heal at a deep, deep cellular level. So I really encourage people to not just fluff the mainstream information that's available online, but start digging deeper and start looking for, potentially a lot of these things that mainstream doesn't really want you to know about per se.
right.
That can be of so much value to us. So before we wrap up this conversation, Debbie, I would love for you to maybe just kind of walk us through, like, what would it, because what you do is so different. So could you maybe walk us through just kind of your process? Like if somebody was interested in working with you, I will put all the links. I'll link that emotional code work that you were talking about, and I'll also link your website and your contact info here in the bottom in the description. But if you could just give us an example of, like, what does that look like? Like, how can, if somebody reaches out to you, what is the process that they would go through before working with you? Is there like a screening process or a discovery process? And then kind of what do your consultations kind of look like? And it obviously you can work from a distance, so it doesn't need to be in physical presence. So if you could just
Right.
kind of give us like a little scenario of, say for example, hey, I want to work with you. What's the next step? How does that work?
Okay. Well, doing an EAV scan, using the IQS, doesn't necessarily even mean that you have to go through the whole detox thing. You could just do a test. I kind of call it like, well, you have a blood, and I tell people, get your blood work done. These information, all information is valid, and totally usable and necessary. Get your annual, with your allopathic doctor, because that does tell you information. It tells me information. When people come to me and they say, well, I got my blood work done and my thyroid's within normal ranges, and I'm doing a scan and saying, well, your thyroid is underperforming. But that tells me information. It's like, I'm showing that there's an energy disturbance, but it hasn't tripped that biochemistry tripwire. And I'm happy about that. So I'm happy to have that knowledge from that blood work.
Right.
That's great news for me, and for the person, that it's not that bad, yet, unless they do something. But just treat it kind of like, an inquiry, like, well, I wonder what's going on energetically. Well, so maybe they want to do a scan like this on an annual basis, like they do blood work. That way, they've got a baseline. Then they can, decide if they want to, do it with their annual blood work, like they do every year. That way, they're going to see patterns before, and they can do something about them. Like,
So we're
say maybe,
talking about prevention here instead of waiting until there's actually a problem. Let's
right,
just make sure there isn't a problem. Oh, I love that.
yeah. So I kind of really like it for that, because, a lot of people think, well, I don't want to go see Deb because she's going to make me do this, that, and the other thing for how long? I ain't got time for that, as a
Right.
thing, but what I'm saying is, use it for information.
Right.
And absolutely nothing wrong with, and even if you can find somebody that has a dark field microscope, doing a live blood analysis once a year, all of these tools are great prevention, you know. So, but after you do a scan, if if you see something, or you have, I mean, most of the people that come to me, I have to be honest, are super sick. I mean, just autoimmune on their last, thread kind of thing. And it's, so they already know, they've been there, they've already been, and then somebody referred them, and it's like, well, I've got this one last thing you can try kind of thing, and that's fine, but that's just kind of what I get, but what I'm trying to tell people is do the prevention.
Yeah, don't get to that point.
It makes my life so much easier.
It makes yours so much easier too.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's so much easier to correct a small thing before it's tripped the wires and triggered that domino effect, down 10 different lines.
Right, exactly. And another thing too that I really do a lot of, honestly, is I work with other practitioners. They'll send me some of their toughest cases because they don't want to throw darts on a wall and just go, well, I think it might be this, take this supplement. I think it might be that, take that supplement, And so they'll send me their cases, and I'll run a scan and I'll give the report with my analysis and recommendations back to the clinician, the referring clinician, and then they have information. So they're not throwing darts on a wall, so I do a lot of that, which I love. I love working with, and collaborating with other clinicians, so they can help their people better.
Right. Yeah, because it just paints a bigger picture and kind of helps to connect those dots. It's like, even myself, it's like I may know what all of those dots are, but if there's that one thing I just can't figure out, what is it that's triggering all of these dots, or what is that missing piece, and that's where connecting with you comes into play and really helps to uncover that missing layer or that piece that's there.
You might have a client that, you're like, well, I think they have parasites, but I'm not sure. And if they do, what kind of parasites? Are they intestinal parasites? Are they cellular? Are they microscopic? What kind?
And where in the body have they settled and made their home?
Then that way you're targeting.
Right. Yeah, because pathogens always pick and this is why it's different, for each individual too, because pathogens always pick the weakest link within the body that is hosting them.
That's
right. So for example, I know I've had issues with a lot of different pathogenic influence, and including parasites as well too. And for me, it's always lung and kidney. And always, I know the minute anything starts to surface in those two areas, or I feel a shift in my body, I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? Let's take a look, and 9 times out of 10, there'll be a pathogenic influence, again, that is being fed off of toxic load through heavy metals or environmental chemicals and things like that are sometimes out of our control. Like I said, a lot of these things we can control only a certain amount of.
Well, and you're a farmer with animals and stuff, and I'm a big animal person. Anybody that has, back a long time ago, our grandparents and great grandparents, they did they wormed the kids when they wormed the, everybody got wormed in the house, and nobody thinks about that today. They don't think that that's a thing. I know.
It's like, oh, we live in this modern world where, parasites are not a problem. They don't exist. And yet, especially in North America, it's like one of the biggest issues. And I'm just like, hello, we still have it.
And doctors will say, well, you haven't been out of the country. You can't have that.
Right. Well. And it's so interesting how, again, especially when you're beginning, women come to me and it's like, oh, my hormones are out of balance, or I'm experiencing this. But once we start peeling back all those layers, it's like often, I would say probably 8 times out of 10, I'm finding that pathogenic influence, mostly parasites in some form, or, we have the bacterial or the viral or the fungal influence that has, proliferated and is thriving in the body at a level that it shouldn't be at. And often too, like, this is the thing, it's like, all of those pathogens have their own hierarchy and their own relationships as well too. So parasites may be the predominant thing showing up in that moment. But if you have parasites, chances are there's a bacterial, fungal, and viral imbalance in there as well too. And they're kind of all, one is the presenting one, but once you start peeling back the layer and you bring this one back into a better relationship within your body, then oops, okay, now this one gets to come and pop its head up and be like, ooh, this one was keeping me down, but now I get to thrive. So I find that it's often a combination that we need to do and work with. Do you see that in the IQS too? Like when that comes up, you can see the
layers and priorities that's a huge benefit to being able to utilize the software.
Nice.
To benefit and to save time and money, because you're not throwing darts on a wall. You're
not running in circles, and chasing your tail basically at that point. And like you said, it's time is money these days too. And so being able to save time and energy and have a better picture of what's going on in our internal bodies is just incredible, I think, and of so much value to us in this day and age, especially with all of these things that, this is 2022. We are surrounded by stress in so many ways these days. And that really takes a toll on our bodies physically as well too. So being able to have this incredible gift of this tool to be able to look inside and see how is our body responding, because if we can support the level of internal stress on our bodies, then that makes us so much more able to handle the external stresses that we necessarily can't change, right?
Right.
So I think that's one of the biggest pieces of education that needs to get out there, is that, there's so many things we can't control, but the few things that we can play such a huge role in how we deal with those things we can't, and make our lives just that much better. And how you move through, these circumstances, and how we deal with these stressors, and how, we show up for life and what we bring to the table, basically. And whether we like drag ourselves out of bed every morning going, oh my God, it's another day, or we like, yes, it's another day.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, well, Debbie, we are getting towards the end of our time here. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to show up here with me today and to share your vast knowledge with us. And I know we've just like peeked at a tiny little bit of it.
There's so much.
I know. I hope that you and I will be able to actually connect ourselves here and collaborate and be able to provide some more education down the line. And that's something that I will put up to my women's group and see what kind of information and questions that people are looking for. And if you are watching this video, please do put up any questions or comments down in the comment section and that you would like Debbie and I to speak about in the future, and perhaps do some educational webinars for you all. So please do connect with us and put that information out there, and we'd be happy to consider that and see how we can support you, because ultimately that's why we're here. Both of us are here to support you to reach a much higher level of experience in life, whereby we get to flow with more ease and more grace in our lives, as opposed to all of that struggle and the stressors that are often our daily existence. And to be able to just find more joy in our day-to-day living as well too.
Joy. Oh yeah.
Joy and fun. Fun is a big one for me, but thankfully being around all the farm animals, they force me to remember what fun is, and to be able to stop and breathe and take a moment to laugh and just watch them, experience life without a care in the world. And that is, I gotta say, one of the most beautiful experiences of my daily existence, and why I chose to go in this direction of farming and raising my own food in so many different ways, as well as just being more connected to the planet, because ultimately we are nature. We are not separate from nature, and this is a concept that man has, we are so above, and no, nature is completely separate from us, but it's not true. We are one and of the same. And if the planet is not thriving, we can't thrive. And if we're not thriving, the planet can't thrive. So it's this symbiotic relationship, and it takes both. And, that's what I feel both you and I are so connected on, and why we do what we do, and why we're here to support people, in that journey.
I know I love what I do. I love helping people, and I love I love learning, and, that'll never stop until I take my last breath. And I love sharing what I learned, and so, yeah, I'm happy as a little clam in my little world.
Well, I am so happy that I know you, and I'm really looking forward to doing more with you and collaborating with you in the future. And again, thank you so much for your time today, Debbie. And this is Debbie Brenner of Quantum Health Consulting, and I will put all of her information in the description here, so anybody who's watching this will know how to be able to connect with Debbie should you wish to.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome, Debbie. Have a fabulous, fabulous day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.